What's up, everyone? This is the Next Take Podcast, episode 46 with Mikel and
Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, today we're talking about American, politics.
Yes.
And
So basically how we're going to be doing this particular episode with American politics is we're going to kind of just do more like a timeline through, kind of talk about different things throughout time, but I don't want to necessarily focus on what is currently going on, which is the election. We are going to be having a separate episode for that. So, like, for example, the Donald Trump trial, there is a verdict in that. We can touch upon it here, but I kind of want to go more in depth with that in the episode for the election, which will be in November. So we don't want to go too far into what's currently happening, which is why we're trying to separate the episodes a little bit with clear separation between the two. So that's kind of what we're gonna do.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool. Let's begin.
Let's start it. Today, in the United States, they operate within a multi-party system with the Democratic and Republican parties as the most influential players. However, there are other parties, which include the Reform Party, the Libertarian Party, the Socialist Party, Natural Law, Constitution, and the Green Party. Also participate in presidential elections, even though sometimes we don't hear much about those other ones. It's usually the top players, which is the first two that I mentioned, the Democratic and the Republican parties.
Yeah, pretty much similar to what liberals and the conservatives here, but I know that NDP is getting a little more support nowadays too.
Yeah.
Even though they did get support back in the day too, but
They
I feel
did with Jack Layton, because he was an NDP.
Yeah,
he was pretty, known within, circles people who pay attention to politics here in Canada. But when he died, it was nuts. But they kind of definitely did take a little bit of a downfall after his death. But yeah, they're always going to be there. We also don't have as many different parties in play. I mean, the people who come in independents, but we don't have the different parties in play that seems like America does. We kind of just have the Liberal, the Conservative, the Green Party, NDP. Those are kind of our four ones there, whereas they have a lot more. And then you also have the people who are coming in as independent as well, which never get really noticed. So kind of just going back in time as to how we got here with politics. So political factions or parties began to form during the struggle over ratification of the federal constitution of 1787. Friction between them increased as attention shifted from the creation of a new federal government to the question of how powerful the federal government would be. So the Federalist Party, which is not a party that necessarily exists now, although that kind of the parties that we have currently, which I can't remember if it's Democratic, but the parties that we currently have kind of came out of the Federalist Party. But that was led by Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton, who wanted a strong central government, while the Anti-Federalists, which was led by Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, advocated states' rights instead of centralized power. He was kind of always seemed to be for the little guy, Thomas Jefferson, whereas Alexander Hamilton was a little bit of an asshole and really wasn't. But Federalists coalesced, I think, around the commercial sector of the country, while their opponents drew their strength from those favoring an agrarian society, I think is the right term. The ensuing partisan battles led George Washington to warn of, quote, the baneful effects of the spirit of party in his farewell address as president of the United States, which we have briefly talked about, which again, if you are a fan of Hamilton, you do kind of hear there's towards somewhere in the middle of the play that they do the song central around George Washington's farewell, which is
Right.
you kind of get more in depth into it, but we have talked about his farewell speech on the podcast too. So, who was the first Democratic president to ever be elected in? So that was Andrew Jackson. He was the first Democratic president, and he was the 7th president to serve from 1829 to 1837. The Democratic Party evolved from the Jeffersonian Republican or the Democratic Republican Party, which was organized by Jefferson and Madison, James Madison, in opposition to the Federalist Party, which we just mentioned. So that technically, like I said, remember how I said like Thomas Jefferson was more for the little people, and actually he seemed to give a shit about the little people. That Democratic Party came out of the Anti-Federalist Party.
Right.
So we're seeing that shift. Who was the first Republican president? That was Eisenhower, who defeated the Democratic Illinois governor Adlai Stevenson II, which I've never heard of him, in a landslide victory, becoming the first Republican president in 20 years. So this election was in 1928. That's when that happened. So that's pretty crazy. And I feel like the Republican Party, I think kind of realizing this now, the Republican Party basically came out of the Federalist Party. So I remember actually watching Hamilton thinking, oh, the Democratic Republican is Republican Party. I was very wrong. That is not what it is. So it's pretty cool to kind of get that understanding and kind of understand like what we're actually kind of looking at.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to have that.
Yeah. Because again, like everyone's like, especially like in the beginning of Hamilton coming out, it's like, oh, Hamilton, I was in Hamilton, like, yay. So, which we will talk about, because I said we will be talking.
No relations to Hamilton, like the play, right?
That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because everyone thinks like Alexander Hamilton is like this great person, and not to say like he didn't pave the way for things that is known today. Like I'm not trying to shit on him, but he was an asshole, and it's pretty clear with things that I do want to talk about in future episodes. I was kind of disgusted by some of the things that I found out, and I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, so we're kind of gonna go through kind of like a timeline, kind of as to, I'm gonna try to keep, I don't want to get too much mixed up with the history and politics, but obviously there is history in politics. So we're kind of see where the kind of all that kind of came from, because we've already talked about certain things, but we're kind of go from the very beginning kind of America and kind of just go through that. So as we know, the founding fathers drew up the new Constitution for the United States of America in not 1987, 1787, which took effect in 1788. And then in 1789, George Washington was elected the first president of the United States of America, which I don't know if George Washington was really a party. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to probably say he was a part of the Federalist Party, if I'm correct in that, which would be considered today the Republican Party. So that's what I'm kind of thinking, if my memory serves me. So in 1791, the Bill of Rights kind of came into effect as well. Let me go through this to make sure that I'm not saying every little thing. So it's 1860. Republican candidate Abraham Lincoln was elected president. So technically, he would have been the first Republican Party, but I just don't know if they considered it Republican Party in 1860. I guess that's maybe the question. So I don't know if they considered it the Republic the Republican Party still, or if it was still referred to as the Federalist Party. I don't know. So, but that was in 1860. So with Lincoln in 1863, he issues the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared slaves in Confederate states to be free, which basically launched the Civil War, if we kind of know that. So we're kind of fast forwarding just really fast into the 1980s. In November, Republican Party's Ronald Reagan elected president and goes on to adopt a tough anti-communist policy abroad and tax-cutting policies at home. So that's what Ronald Reagan was doing in the 1980s, which is not great. Reagan's vice president, which was George Sr., was elected president. So yeah, that was kind of the fast track of the timeline. Because again, there's a lot more history that's not really related to politics in there, but I kind of wanted to just kind of fast track it. So kind of other things that kind of happened within the Federalist Party that I thought was kind of interesting as well. That's kind of just to show kind of what politicians were doing back in the 1700s into the 1800s. So with the new country, which had George Washington as our president, they sent troops to Western Pennsylvania in 1794 to quell the Whiskey Rebellion, which was an uprising by citizens who refused to pay a liquor tax that had been imposed by Alexander Hamilton, since he was Secretary of Treasury, to raise money for the national debt and to assert the power of the national government. The fuck? So because y'all are in debt, you're gonna tax the people because you're in debt.
Yeah. I remember like history. Like I remember like a lot of like when I was watching, reading, remember the show Reading Rainbow? They will teach you, they will have a book based on what like they'll have like a special message based on how the Americans used to be in debt and then just tax the people. Yeah. So I don't know what book that was, but there was a book that I went to the library and it was based on that. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's clearly there's truth to that, because again, it's like you can't be taxing people for whatever reason you're in debt, which it could have been from the war, could have not been, I don't know. But you're in debt and you're going to tax the people who were part of the revolution, helped you to be freed from the UK or what was the UK, Britain. But it's just like not cool. I'd be pissed too. So Federalists cheered the triumph of national authority, while members such as Thomas Jefferson's Republican, now later Democratic Republican Party, were appalled by what they saw as government overreach, which I 100% agree with him.
Yeah.
More than 2 centuries later, the names and faces have changed, but the story is still ongoing. The Louisiana Territory, the huge swath of land, which is more than 800 to 1,000 square miles, that made up the western Mississippi River Basin, passed from French colonial rule to Spanish colonial rule, and then back to the French before U.S. President Thomas Jefferson pried it away from Napoleon in 1803 for a final price of about $27 million.
Wow.
A lot of money. Out of it were carved in their entirety the states of Louisiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Oklahoma, along with most of Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Minnesota. So with this $27 million sale, these are where the states came from. Pretty crazy. So exploring the land acquired through the Louisiana Purchase gave Lewis and Clark something to do for about 2 years. So I know the name Lewis and Clark. I don't know a lot about them, but that's basically Thomas Jefferson is the reason that those states exist in the states. he had to pay $27 million for it, but you got the it's still good. So in the 1820s, there was something called the Monroe Doctrine, which was roughly 1823. So the era of good feelings, which was a period of American prosperity and isolationism, was in full swing when the president James Monroe was in power. This would be later considered the Monroe Doctrine. So according to the policy, or he created this, the Monroe Doctrine, according to the policy, the United States would not intervene in European affairs, but likewise, it would not tolerate further European colonization in the Americas or European interference in the governments of the American hemisphere. It is questionable whether the U.S. at the time had the might to back up its slayer, but later, as a world power, it would implement a broad interpretation of the doctrine in its sphere. But it's because of him that, like, I'm surprised that Europe was just able to just come in and try and colonize and shit, but it's because of him why that kind of was put to a stop after America became America. So it's pretty crazy. So in the 1830s, which was kind of called the era of the common man, which we'll get some information with this. So Andrew Jackson was the president at that point. As we established, he was president from 1829 to 1837, was said to have ushered in the era of the common man. So while suffrage had been broadly expanded beyond men of prosperity, it was not a result of Jackson's efforts. Despite the careful propagation of his image as a champion of popular democracy and as a man of the people, he was much more likely to align himself with the influential than with the have-nots, with the creditor than with the debtor. So that even though he was supposed to be democratic, he was supposed to be a person for the people, he wasn't. Really. Not really. So, I did want to talk about this particular thing that's coming up just because it's not really, quote unquote, a politician, but I think it definitely has shaped things. So I thought this was really interesting. So I kind of just want to talk about it. So in the 1890s, we had Plessy versus Ferguson, which was in 1896. So with the end of Reconstruction in the 1870s, the enactment of Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in the South. So that was the thing that allowed segregation. In its 7-1 decision in the Plessy versus Ferguson case in May 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court gave constitutional sanction to laws designed to achieve racial segregation by means of separate and supposedly equal public facilities and services for African Americans and whites, thus providing a controlling judicial precedent that would endure until the 1950s. So, I thought that interesting.
Interesting, yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So in 1933, and at least 1/4 of the U.S. workforce was unemployed with the Great Depression. And this was when President Franklin D. Roosevelt was in power. So he was dealing with the Great Depression with all of that. So a federal government he created something called the New Deal, which is a federal government program that sought to bring about immediate economic relief as well as reforms in industry, agriculture, finance, labor, and housing. On March 12th, 1933, Roosevelt gave the first in a long series of straightforward and formal radio addresses, which was called the Fireside Chat, which were initially intended to garner support for the New Deal, but eventually contributed to reformulating the American social mentality from one of despair to one of hope during a time of multiple crises, including the Great Depression and World War II. So very similarly to King George with World War II, he would do something similar as well.
King George. Yeah, I'm
Queen Elizabeth's father.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the royals and everything, right?
Well, yeah, it's like what he was doing, what Franklin Roosevelt was doing, was very similar to what King George would do as well with the upcoming war, World War II. Yeah, because he would do that as well. So in the 1970s, we had something called Watergate. Have you ever heard of Watergate? The Watergate scandal?
No, I never heard of Watergate scandal.
Okay. Watergate scandal is so crazy, and what I'm about to say doesn't even scratch the surface. That this might be something we might talk about in a future episode. We'll see. But it's a crazy thing that happened. But we'll do a quick little synopsis about it. On August 9th, 1974, facing likely impeachment for his role in covering up the scandal surrounding the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. in June 1972, Republican Richard Nixon became the only U.S. president to resign. He is the only one who resigned. The loss of faith in government officials that resulted from the scandals suffused both popular and political culture with paranoia and disillusionment for the remainder of the decade. It was bad.
Yeah. Can imagine.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. Oh, definitely was scratching surface, man. So in the 1980s, we had something called the PATCO strike. So U.S. President Ronald Reagan triumphed over the strike of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, PATCO, in August 1981, played a pivotal role in the long-term weakening of the power of labor unions and helped set the tenor for his administration. Reagan's ascent to the presidency in 1980 had much to do with his rhetorical ability to break the cloud of gloom which was caused by Watergate. This abetted his efforts to implement supply-side economic policies predicated on the notion that lower taxes on wealthy job creators would create a rising tide that would lift all boats. Critics argue that the wealth created during the decade never trickled down to the rank and file. So, since at least the 1980s, the US had been politically polarized by so-called cultural wars that symbolically divided the country into Republican-dominated red states, which are typically characterized as conservative, God-fearing, and opposed to big government, abortion, and same-sex marriage, and Democratic-dominated blue states, which theoretically is liberal, secular, politically correct, and for legal abortion access. The 2016 election of Republican Donald Trump, whose presidential campaign was grounded in nationalism and anti-immigrant rhetoric, could have been seen then as a reaction against the seeming triumph of blue state values during the two-term presidency. The Democrat Barack Obama. Which just feels like racism.
Yeah,
I think we have established that.
You seen what happened to his, well, since we're talking about American politics right now, you seen what happened to his trial, Donald Trump's trial.
Yeah, so I don't
a
know a
few.
lot of the ins and outs of what happened during
Yeah,
the trial, but I
yeah,
did find out what the verdict was, which we will talk more in length again, like we said during the election episode.
yeah.
Uh, is that he was found guilty,
Mm-hmm.
which is hooray.
And
Thank,
then
thank God.
you, oh, you should have seen the clip of the these
Everyone
Trump
who
supporters. Yeah,
stormed the Capitol on January 6th are real mad. I'm just
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Um,
So it's yeah, those Trump supporters, man,
it's something else,
crazy.
man.
Yeah, I don't I like I understand why people. I kind of understand why people vote for Trump because he's Republican. That's one. That's another reason,
Mm-hmm.
and he does um, it's not regulation, but like, oh, I don't know, like open some laws for a certain type of Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I don't understand like the true root of this Trump supporters, like the Trump supporters who just like lie, who just basically think that he's not guilty, or what's the crime? I don't see any crime. I'm like, okay, the crime, you just do your research on the internet and you
But
see what the crime
again,
is
we've
of.
seen that many times
Yeah,
in trials that are not involving a political figure, if you want to call him that. And people want to deny.
yeah,
And it's ridiculous. But
yeah,
it
yeah,
with him, we have had people who are considered Republican.
yeah.
In
No,
fact,
George
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 Bush,
W. Bush. Yeah.
Bill Clinton, I believe, was Republican
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was Democrat, wasn't he? Wasn't his wife
mm,
Democrat too?
I feel like he was Republican. I'm gonna double check. I always thought he was Democratic, but I think I found out recently that he was Republican. Oh no, I'm wrong. You're right. He's
Okay.
Democratic.
Yeah,
So,
because he was with Barack at that
right,
picture,
right.
and then yeah, and
But yeah, I mean, even George Bush, that's the one I'm
then,
thinking too.
mm,
It
who's
wasn't like
who's
this.
John McClane as well. John
I don't know
McClane
much
wasn't
about John
he
McClane.
he wasn't that bad. He was a gentleman. I remember I seen clips of him, respecting Obama. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was basically like saying to the people that disagreed or disagree with Obama, or saying like rude stuff about Obama. It's like, no, 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 no. He's just a great man that I have disagreements with. That's what he said.
But that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like with Donald Trump
Yeah.
being who he is and saying the quiet things out loud,
Yeah. And
and that
misinformation as well.
mhm, and that resonating with people who always say the quiet thing out loud, you know,
Hmm.
and that that's why
Hmm.
people follow him the way they do.
Hmm.
And can we not forget that Donald Trump is the person who would say, "You're fired" at the end of every
Hmm.
episode that he had, The Apprentice.
Hmm.
You know, this is a person that every Christmas that I want to watch Home Alone 2, he shows up on screen. This
Right.
man is not a politician.
No.
He's a
He's
joke.
Yeah, he's more of a well, he's not a good businessman, to be honest with you, but like,
Well, I would disagree. He is a businessman, and he was good at what he was doing.
yeah, okay,
Clearly,
no, you
right?
was, yeah, that's the right word, was.
Yeah, he was good at
And
what he was
then
doing,
I,
but
I think I did that.
he
I think he
overreached.
got, yeah,
Is
yeah,
because again, it's like it's funny to me, and I'm gonna kind of go back to 90 Day Fiance for a second. I don't talk about them in my podcast because if you know stories,
Yeah.
it's bad. But for those who know Angela and Michael, that woman is a Republican and has her Black African husband Team Trump too. And he doesn't really know because he doesn't need to know. He's from Nigeria, he doesn't need to know. And it makes me laugh because I'm like, I'm sorry I'm going to say this because I'm sure no one's going to hate me for saying this. But you have this trash woman, white woman, loving Trump, and that's her right to do so if she wants to. But then having her husband, who has no clue, also loving him. And he comes from a country that is blacklisted by Trump because it's a Muslim country. And partly why he couldn't get into the country.
Right.
Because he applied for the K-1 visa. It failed. And the only logical reason was because he was from a Muslim state. Or a Muslim country. Nigeria is considered a Muslim country. So he couldn't come. I find it hilarious that when he does come, which he only been here since December of 2023, and we won't go into anything else, but he landed in America in December 2023, was when a Democratic president was in office. Something to say.
Yeah.
But we want to love someone like Donald Trump. And that's only the tip of the iceberg of what he was doing. But we'll go more into depth with him and everything else.
Yeah.
But
hopefully, well, the things I like to see a lot of these presidents do is just, I'm not going to say make America great again.
Please don't say that.
No, but I want them to just, do.
Can we get America back to what it used to be?
Yeah, no.
Well, not quite.
Say that too.
Not quite like
that's
that.
The same thing. That's the same thing too.
Well,
do some positive stuff for America. Like, do some great stuff for the country instead of just So I understand, why people vote for Donald Trump. I understand why people vote for Biden because, certain great stuff that they do for certain Americans that fits with their element. But when you get too crazy, and I feel like Donald Trump during that time, like the January 16th, had something to do with that when he was it because he lost?
Well,
he lost
yes,
the election?
partially. Yeah. It was, so what happened, he did lose the election.
Yes.
But he would have lost the election in November. And January would have been when the transition was going to be happening from Trump to Biden.
Yeah.
And I believe, if my understanding is correct with this, is that Trump kind of tweeted something that
I remember that, yeah.
Kind of maybe fueled the fire.
Yes.
I'm not going to say he's responsible for it, but he didn't help it. And I think, unfortunately, right now, when you have people with certain beliefs, and in particular, I am talking QAnon, who believe Trump is some sort of God to them or whatever the hell.
Yeah, God figure or something like that.
I have no intentions of talking about QAnon on this podcast.
Yeah.
But if you want to deep dive into QAnon, and that's why we drink, did a deep dive on that 3-parter. go ahead for it because I'm not doing it on this podcast. And that those were the people he triggered that day. It was them. So yeah, it's just America's kind of gone to shit a little bit.
Yeah.
Because of him.
I think that's the best. I feel like he should focus on, doing great stuff for America instead of just, all this like,
better hair, less tan, or just going away altogether. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is how this will play out, because with a guilty verdict, he can't become president. So I think that's kind of the silver lining. But he's of course going to appeal.
Yeah.
We'll see.
People are saying that they'll still vote for him. Well, his supporters will still vote for him.
You can't vote for a president who currently. Well, no, I don't know if they're going to still have his name on the ballots. We'll have to see what happens. Because again, his verdict just came through, so we'll have to see what happens. But you can elect a president who's currently convicted of a crime and who, from my understanding, might have to serve time. So how does that work?
I mean, he can. What you could do is just hand him papers.
Lord Jesus Christ.
And just have him and then when
do a makeshift Oval Office in the prison.
That would be interesting to see, like him just like getting handed the paper, and then they show him that he signed the what do you call that? A certain what do Congress pass? A bill? There we go. So he signs the bill and he just shows it from his jail.
The thing too, the one like silver lining with him being president when he was elected the first time was that like no decision is made by the president alone, which was kind of the silver lining. But again, he kind of fixed that issue by getting the people on his side into positions that he needed to get them into, who are going to help push things along. So this is part of me wants him to get his second term over with, but I also feel like he'd be kind of person who would be like, I'm going to create an endless terms, You
mean you talking about Joe Biden or Trump?
No, Trump. Yeah. Because at least if like he has a second term, it's done. He can never be president again. But I feel like, again, it's like you could do a lot of damage in 4 years.
Who's the other option for Americans?
Biden.
I think Joe Biden and
Biden's the only other one. I don't know if there's any other people in the race right now. Usually, even if there are people in the beginning, they drop out around this time.
Yeah.
So I think from my understanding, the only other person involved is Biden. And people aren't happy with Biden.
Yeah, people are not happy. So it's like 80-something years old, sleeping in podiums and
he was
conferences.
He was hot man back in his day.
Yeah.
But he's not like, what was it, Bernie Sanders? It's not that old. That was old. You remember remember when Biden went in? I think it was Biden when he was. Yeah, you know what I mean. And they had like Bernie in his little mittens.
Yeah.
And then the hair, gold. Great.
I'm thinking that there's certain bills that rights that Joe Biden has passed that are good for Americans. Of course, there's probably certain Americans that don't agree with the bills that he has passed.
Of course.
But I'm sure he's doing it for the good of. Huh?
You're
Yeah,
never
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
please everybody, but
It's, I'm sure he's doing
yeah.
it for the good of America. Not, yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, he could, I think he got the recognition he did, and people trusted him because he was Obama's vice president. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I think like I trusted that too. And I'm like, oh, he's Obama's vice president. I'm like, come on. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, personally, if I have to pick the worst evil, obviously it's going to be Biden.
Mhm.
Let's keep Kamala in there. And yeah, it'd be kind of great to see her run one day too.
Yeah, Michelle Obama. People have been vouching for Michelle Obama to
I
run, but
don't
I guess she's
know. I
just
don't
not
think I
interested.
know.
She's not
No,
interested.
no, no. She did this alongside her husband. This was
Hmm.
her husband's thing. This
Yeah,
wasn't.
elders.
This was not
Yeah,
hers. She took.
she's not interested.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
took the opportunity to do what she wanted. That was passionate for her.
Hmm.
But no, she has no desire to be in politics. That's always been the case.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, like best of two evils, both Trump and
That's always how it ends. When it comes to
yeah,
politicians, right?
yeah. Well, like good thing that Trudeau doesn't do that. He's a professional, more of a professional than a Trump.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I think. Oh,
people there
we've had
and
some doozies. It's
yeah,
nothing like that.
yeah, there's certain people that disagree with me that he's a professional. Because there's
Yeah.
certain stuff with Trudeau that is out there that we've seen. So like
He's made some choice decisions over the years.
yes, in his younger years, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, he was still a professional. He was a teacher. So,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I think we have more, and I think we have more professionals in Canada than we
yeah.
in yeah. So like
I mean, yeah,
you
like I
look
said,
at
like we don't have
Jamie.
anything like that.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean, we had
we
our
can't.
episode
We
for
can't.
the Fords.
Yeah, we came
Yeah.
close with Kevin O'Leary. Remember him?
I do remember him, but I don't remember much about what he stood for. But I do remember.
Yeah,
I do remember
yeah.
Kevin O'Leary, yeah.
He was close. He was going to be a conservative, I believe.
Okay. Isn't he doing something else these days, Kevin O'Leary?
Yes, yes. You remember Shark Tank? He's on. He's on.
Right. Not Shark Tank, but our equivalent, Dragon's Den, is what you're probably
Dragon's Den,
thinking,
but
right?
he's no longer there anymore.
Oh, okay.
He's in the American one.
Oh,
I think he
he's
moved
on the
to
American one.
yeah. I think he moved to America because he doesn't.
Oh, okay.
I think he has issues with the Canadian pop. He doesn't like. I think he doesn't like Trudeau. It's another one that doesn't like
So
Trudeau.
you moved
So
out of Canada
yeah, he
to
doesn't like the
potentially go to the States where you're gonna
yeah.
have to deal with Trump? Okay.
Kind
Sounds about
of
right.
yeah. I don't know. So,
No,
but yeah,
we don't claim him.
yeah. That's another guy that I wish I had is more of his backbone.
Um,
He has a like it's well, it's like a-hole-ish, but like at the same time, boldness at the same time. I don't know that if a-hole-ish and boldness fusing each other. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I
So,
don't know. It
so
depends on the person, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
But
but yeah,
but yeah, with this episode, like we said, we're gonna go more in depth with things with Trump and the election and all that. Out of this episode too, I do, like I said, mentioned I do want to talk about Watergate. And I think we did talk about like off the recording, like off not on the podcast. We did talk about wanting to talk about Obama, but I
mhm,
think Obama's a kind of person who I feel like we should be talking about in his own episode outside of this. So I do think that might be
yeah,
something that could be coming. And maybe I think I've also thought about Bill Clinton as well, because even outside
there's
politics with him, I mean,
I mean, same with Barack Obama as well. People will say the
Yeah,
same thing, but I
that's
feel like
exactly it.
I think he's. I feel, in my opinion, I feel like Barack Obama is like more respected.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, in my opinion.
That's why I
But there's
always say
people.
he'll
Yeah,
always be my president.
yeah,
But anyone else, he's always my president.
yeah.
It's a sad day when he couldn't. Like I literally said, I'm like, can we just
Mm-hmm.
keep him going?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So.
so those are things that I think we'll have in
Mm-hmm.
the future,
Yeah.
with those particular presidents. I did consider George Bush too, but as we are going to be talking 9/11, we can kind of talk about him there. I don't want to necessarily do an episode just for him.
I mean,
I don't really
I'm
want
sure,
to do it.
like I said, like it comes with like every single president, they probably had like they ha- they probably have done like a lot of good for America,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there's
yeah.
probably a lot of Americans that
Even
don't.
even
Yeah,
Trump, even
yeah,
Trump.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the employment rate with him was,
Pretty,
I think, at an
pretty,
all-time low. I think that's
yeah,
the way you go, right?
yeah.
When it with him, so that's incredible. I'll give him
Mm,
that.
mm,
He handled COVID well too. Give him that.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's all I can give him.
yeah. There's probably a lot more that we don't know as well,
I don't
because
know.
like I don't know, like, because with him. He could either like you can just go on like his website. He could be either telling the truth or be lying, and that's the issue.
Well, not
With
website,
Donald
Twitter. We want
Twitter. Oh,
Twitter.
he doesn't have
I
a
don't know if he
website.
has a
It was
website.
just
He would go on Twitter. He was banned off on Twitter for the longest
so
time.
would the information be on the White House, like
Mm-hmm.
the stuff with the presidents
I don't
have
know.
like done on the party?
I don't
Because
know.
like you can see that with Trudeau and his party,
Yeah, but
like
I don't.
what
I
they
don't know.
have done and everything for Canada.
Yeah, but you can just do a search. But
Mm.
I
With Trump, I don't know. Like I don't know if he's telling the truth or because sometimes I'm like he'll overhype something and then
of course.
he'll overhype the numbers and then and then you see the real numbers and you're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But yeah, like I said, a lot of presidents have like done a lot of good, and some some people just don't agree with what the presidents do. So this ends episode is my bad.
46.
Episode 46. Okay, there we go. This ends episode 46 of the Next Take Podcast. The Next Take Podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called solo.to/Next Take Podcast. Where else are we at, Tanyka?
We're on Facebook and Instagram at Next Day Podcast and Twitter and TikTok at Next Day Pod.
Okay. So we basically talk about like, American politics, everything that's in America,
Mm-hmm.
politics. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it from the start to the end, from the past to the present or the other way around, from the past, future, present, right?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. So anything you want to say, Tini?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. So I'm Mikel and
And I'm Tanyka.
we're out until next week. See you guys.
Bye.